Thank you, GJ. That was very sweet. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. What a beautiful theater, what a beautiful audience. Thank you so much for coming down today. I really appreciate it. So straight off the bat, I have a confession to make. I'm addicted to wow moments. So you know those moments where there's something that's just so shocking or something that's so amazing or something that's just so beautiful that you just can't help but go, wow. I love that. I have a secret wish that when I die, somehow there'll be some sort of, iPhone montage of all of the times in my life that I've said the word wow. And this crazy, wonderful journey that I'm on with Cheetah Conservation Botswana started with a wow moment. I can actually look back on my life and pinpoint the exact moment that changed my life forever and set me on this totally crazy course. And that was the moment that I saw a cheetah for the first time, up close. How many of you guys have seen a cheetah in real life? Hands up. Whoa, nice. How many of you guys have seen one sort of within 10 yards? Oh, you guys are lucky. All right, so you'll understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so this moment, I was working at Australia Zoo, fresh out of university, and I was working for, Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter? Crikey? Yeah, he was my boss. So it might explain why I'm a little bit crazy as well. I learned a lot from him. So I was working at Australia Zoo. I was feeding the koalas one morning before the zoo opened, and I was carrying this massive pile of eucalyptus branches heading to the koala enclosure. Suddenly I hear this voice behind me say, "Jane, just don't move for a second, okay?" And that zoo, there's crocodiles, there's tigers, there's all sorts. If someone tells you that, you do not move. So I've got this big pile of eucalypt leaves and I'm standing there and I'm just frozen. And I look over my shoulder as subtly as I can, and this cheetah walks within a couple of yards of me on a leash, like a dog, right? No harness, no no one with anyway. I felt quite vulnerable, but she walked right past me, and she was flat out the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And I couldn't help but just go, wow. And she was just, she had these shoulders, and it was just moving, like rolling over each other, like so flexible. And her spine was so flexible that it looked like her front end and her back end was sort of moving independently of each other. She was like sauntering like a catwalk model, mind the pun. But and then she walked past and she was purring. And cheetahs are the biggest cat that purrs. And it was just, that huge chest of theirs, and it was just resonating, and this sound was just incredible. And then she gave me this like sideways glance, like this pissy little cat glance, just like a domestic cat, right? But like to a much larger proportion. And I was like, oh my goodness. And that was it, I was done. I was totally in love with cheetahs from that moment on, and I was signed, sealed, delivered. So the next day I went and applied for a job in the cheetah department, and then I ended up doing this. They paid me to do this, right? Can you believe that? That's just a dream job, and you can't, I was already in love with cheetahs, but doing that, I totally fell in love with them. Just being able to spend the time with them, learn their personalities, their intricacies, but mostly I was just impressed with the sheer athleticism of them. They're magnificent animals. When you see them run, it's just like nothing else. They're so graceful, so elegant, most of the time. Yeah. But they are beautiful, beautiful animals, and I just totally fell in love. And so after a while working at the zoo, I got excited about conservation. I was really shocked to hear that they were in so much trouble in the wild. And so I wanted to help. I wanted to do something. I wanted to get on the front line of conservation, really, try to help to make a difference. And so everyone always asked me, how did you get into this field? Because, a lot of people were interested. I said, well, it's a very, very complicated process, really difficult. It's a thing called Google, and you type in research assistant cheetah, and then you press enter. And a job came up with Cheetah Conservation Botswana, a 2-month placement as a volunteer research assistant. And I applied, and they accepted, and I was just so, so happy. You know, I'd heard about Cheetah Conservation Botswana from some very reputable sources that they're an amazing organization, grassroots, fairly small, but doing really cool, very sustainable community programs. And so I was really excited about what was in store for me. And I'd heard a lot about Botswana, but I'd never been to Africa. But Botswana had this amazing reputation. You know, these incredible places that you hear about, sound so exotic and majestic. You know, places like the Okavango Delta, just one of the most incredible wildlife areas in the world, the largest inland delta in the world. The Makharihari pans, largest salt pans in the world. The Chobe Riverfront, largest elephant population in the world lives there. And the famed Central Kalahari Game Reserve. I mean, these are just incredible places. I couldn't wait to get there. And the really cool thing about Botswana is that there's not many people to mess things up. So a population of 2.5 million people, there are actually more cattle in Botswana than there are humans. So in terms of this map, the dark green areas show areas with very little human impact. So you can quite clearly see the Sahara Desert in the north and the Kalahari Desert there in Botswana. So it's really one of the last wild places. It's just an absolute Eden. And because there are so few people there, you've got the world's largest population of African wild dog, the world's largest population of, anyone know what this is? Oh, you guys are fantastic. Brown hyenas, yes. World's largest population, highly threatened, only about 5,000 left in the world. World's largest population of elephants, one of the world's largest population of lion. And now I'm very sad to report, thanks to worldwide crashes in their populations in other countries, Botswana now has the dubious honor of having the world's largest population of cheetahs. So when you look at the cheetah habitat, and I was sort of doing a bit of research into this new place where I was going at Cheetah Conservation Botswana, half of the world's cheetahs were here between Botswana and Namibia. So this area, half of the world's cheetahs concentrated there. And if you zoom in on southern Africa, it gets even denser in this area here. So that area is one of the densest populations of cheetahs in the world. More than half of the southern African population is just there. It's a heart shape. Coincidence? No, this is Cheetah Heartland here. And as my job at CCB was going to take me right here in the middle of Cheetah Heartland, I was so excited. This place I knew was going to be awesome. But the job, once I got there, wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I was, expecting to go and be cuddling cheetahs like I was at the zoo. I was going to be like Tarzan and Jane running around in the bush. I ended up working with these guys more than anything, and these guys, because 90% of Botswana's cheetah population actually lives outside of the protected areas. And the biggest threat to cheetahs in the world, especially in Botswana, is human-wildlife conflict. So in order to save the cheetahs, I needed to be working with the livestock farmers. And the accommodations weren't exactly what I was expecting either when I got there, I must admit. Though our research camp in Hansi did have a pool, it needed a little bit of cleaning out, especially when the bullfrogs came out. And the wildlife wasn't exactly what I was expecting. It was an entomologist's dream, I'll give you that. But I'm not too fond of creepy crawlies. And they were everywhere. And if you had a phobia, you were bound to encounter it in the Kalahari. Especially if you're scared of Burt's Beeswax lip balm. They were everywhere. They'd jump out of bushes and everything. But for me, it's snakes. Give me a cheetah any day, I'll wrestle it, that's fine, but I cannot deal with snakes. And they would follow me around. I had them wrapped around my toilet, they were in my shower, I had them in the roof of the bathroom, there was one under my bed for 3 days. I had a black mamba in my desk. For 3 hours I was sitting there at that desk before I realized. I mean, it was tough. This new life I had chosen, it was tough. And you know, the temperatures were really nice as well. It was just the most glamorous job I'd ever had, basically. My hygiene standards really took a hit as well. But it was all about the work. And the work, like I said, it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. Most of the time I spent talking to farmers, trying to convince them not to shoot cheetahs. And the other half of my job was either driving to all the rural places we were going. The people that have volunteered for CCB will remember that. Or being at my desk entering data. Now I paint a bit of a grim picture, but the point that I'm ineloquently trying to make is that life in the Kalahari is really tough. Okay, not just for someone like me coming from outside, but for the people that live there. You know, you've got people that are reliant on agriculture in a desert, in an area where there are more large carnivores than anywhere else in the world. I mean, this is bound to be a really, really tough life. And the people of Botswana are some of the nicest people you're ever going to meet. Like, really genuine, really kind, love the outdoors. They're just really, really hospitable, really good people. Unfortunately, they don't really like cheetahs. Now, this was one of the things, the thing that I really had the biggest trouble with. You know, the snakes were tough, sure, but the fact that everyone hates cheetahs. I mean, you know, someone that loves cheetahs so much, and you guys will probably get it as well. How could anyone hate a cheetah? But these guys, it was amazing how much they really hated cheetahs. Now, this is Legolas. Some of you will know his story. He was one of the largest cheetahs ever collared. Collared him in 2014. By the end of the next year, he was dead. He had been shot on the side of the highway, seemingly for no reason at all. So literally there was no livestock in the area. It wasn't a conflict issue. Someone just shot him for the fun of it. The most magnificent cheetah in the world. I collared him myself. He was beautiful. Just for the fun of it. And some farmers, they would admit it to me all the time. They would swerve to hit cheetahs with their car on the roads. Some of them would try to run them down and exhaust them by running them down and chasing them through the bush in their cars. Some of them would beat them to death with sticks. I've got a ton of photos I've been told I'm not allowed to show you of just horrible, horrible things that go on. So that was really hard to digest. I thought I had gone to Cheetah Heaven, and I'd ended up in Cheetah Hell. The only reason that it was the largest, one of the densest populations of cheetahs was because the farmers had already shot all the lions out from those areas, their largest competitor. And now cheetahs were next on their list. Khansi district, which is where most of our work is based, all of our work is based, has the dubious honor of having more cheetahs shot in that district than anywhere else in Botswana. So for us and the work that we do trying to mitigate conflict and promote coexistence, this was the most important place for us to be. And this was where we were going to save the most amount of cheetahs. So I was really happy to be there on the ground. Now fast forward 9 years into the future. In January, I was in Nairobi for a conference on the range-wide conservation of cheetahs, so Africa-wide, people from all over Africa. And I was having a whiskey with a friend of mine who's also in the conservation field. Sorry, I have to bring up the whiskey because all of my good stories involve whiskey. So we were having a whiskey. He'd been in the conservation game a very long time, a very knowledgeable guy. And we were talking about conflict. And he said, Jane, you know, it's quite simple. 80% of conflict, human-wildlife conflict, is solved quite simply. You give them a livestock guarding dog, you build them a kraal to put their livestock in to keep them safe. You do a workshop and teach them how to do predator-friendly farming techniques, and they'll go and they'll do them and they'll stop shooting cheetahs. Easy. I'm like, where are you working? It's never that easy. But okay, I get your point. I said, what about the 20%? And he said, Don't even waste your time. He said, they're stubborn, they're set in their ways, they don't want to listen about conservation. You will never change their minds. You will waste all of your time trying to change their minds and they'll never change. Now, I love things that seem impossible. Clearly, I mean, look at the job that I'm in, right? So when he says to me, no, it's impossible, you can't do it, of course, the first thing that I want to do is go and do it. But at first I didn't even believe him, to be fair. So I sort of took a step back and had a look at CCB and some of the work that we had done. And we do quite intensive monitoring and evaluation of all the work that we do to try to see if we're actually having an effect. So we had some of this data on hand. And I was having a look. And in terms of the farmers that come to our farmer workshops, so we teach them how to do predator-friendly farming techniques, how to protect their livestock so their livestock doesn't get eaten by carnivores so they then don't have to go out and shoot carnivores. 86% will go and implement those changes after the workshops. Great. It's a good result. Bush camps. When we bring kids to our education facility and do bush camps, 80% of kids go away from those bush camps with a better knowledge of conservation and the environment. 80%. If you look on the flip side, 20% of farmers in one of the surveys we'd done with game farmers had killed a cheetah in the last 12 months. 20%. In terms of my master's research, this is data from my master's, 22% of farmers would shoot carnivores even when there's no threat to livestock. So purely indiscriminate killing. And I was looking at all these figures and I'm like, hang on a second. This is pretty clear 80-20, right? But 80% is fairly decent in terms of monitoring and evaluation. We took this data to our donors, to the zoos that sponsor us, to the grants that we do. They would be quite impressed. 80% is not bad. But the problem is it's not just 20% of farmers that we're talking about. That doesn't equate to 20% of cheetahs getting killed. That's the problem. So what you have is you have a small number of farmers that kill a large number of cheetahs. And we had seen this in our work with the farmers. You could tell. You've got one or two farmers that are just killing everything. And then we've got the data to back it up now. A friend of mine from Namibia did a study on commercial farmers there. So just across the border, very similar situation to the commercial farms in Botswana. And he found that of 185 farmers, you had 10, which was 5%, that killed 72%. 5% of the farmers killed 72% of the cheetahs. Crazy. But it got even worse. 3 farmers killed, that's 1.6% of the sample, killed 50% of the cheetahs. That's crazy. Now, in terms of the 80%, 20% debate, do you think these guys are part of the 80% that's easy to reach? I can just give them a livestock guarding dog, they're going to change their ways. No way. These guys are part of the hard-to-get 20%. So us at CCB, we were like, right, I think we now need to reassess what we're doing, because we need to get those guys. Those guys. We need to make sure we're reaching them. We cannot let so many cheetahs get killed. So we looked at our programs, and we have had 3 main departments at CCB, our education, research, and community departments. And our education department involved us going out to schools in the rural areas, teaching kids about the environment, why cheetahs are important in the ecosystem, and why we should conserve our natural resources. We would have bush camps where we brought the kids into our education facility for 4 days and basically just make them jump around and put their hands in the air for photos the whole time. But they enjoyed it, We also taught them a bit of stuff about environment. And we played lots of really fun games with the kids to try to, in schools, we would go into schools and teach them with fun games and things about why cheetahs are important. And we'd always have a lot of fun doing it. We also had a fantastic research department, have a fantastic research department that takes really cute camera trap photos of antelope. This is a steenbok. And it's really tough with cheetahs in the farmlands, and people don't understand this. Most of the research into cheetah ecology and behavior has been done in the Serengeti and the Masai Mara and the beautiful open grasslands, the protected areas in East Africa. So when you're talking about southern African cheetahs and that are living outside the protected areas in the bushy farmlands, they're going to act completely differently. So we really don't actually know what's going on with these cats. And we need to know in order to be able to build our mitigation techniques. So if we have a farmer that's got goats getting killed by cheetahs, we need to know how those cheetahs are behaving so that we can give him solutions for his problem. So we use a lot of indirect research techniques like motion-activated camera traps, which these videos are from, and Scat Detection. So Scat is the scientific technical term for poop. So we have a Scat Detection dog, that actually a local breed Scat Detection dog, the first of its kind in southern Africa, that goes out and finds cheetah poop, and that helps us to find out what's going on with these cats. We also use spore surveys, so counting the footprints in the beautiful Kalahari sand. And all these techniques help us to understand what's going on with these cats. And the research that we do fuels our education programs and our community programs. So our community programs involve us going out to those areas and the people that are living side by side with cheetahs and teaching them about cheetahs, teaching them how to identify cheetahs versus leopards. So we've got a cheetah skin there and a leopard skin. People don't know how to tell the difference in Botswana. So we teach them that, teach them how to identify what killed their livestock, and we show them how that they can adapt their farming techniques so that they can coexist with cheetahs happily. One of our favorite programs is one of my favorite programs too, very dear to my heart, our livestock guarding dog program. For those of you who don't know what livestock guarding dogs are, they're dogs that are raised with livestock, so they pretty much think that they're like a goat, and so they then protect the herd like it's their family, and they do that pretty much instinctually. And they're just absolutely fantastic. Our program is quite unique in the region in that we use local dogs. So these local mixed breed mongrel dogs that are a dime a dozen, we pick them up, train them as puppies, and then place them with farmers that are having conflict with cheetah. Fantastic program, super effective, reduce livestock losses by 86%, again, 86%. They just do a fantastic job. And in a new development, I know, right? Almost as cute as a cheetah. In a new development, we're taking rescue puppies, unwanted puppies from shelters around Botswana, and giving them a second chance at life as livestock guardians. So they go from death row at the shelters and end up saving cheetahs in the wild. So these programs are great, but we had been doing them in isolation of each other. And they'd been reaching the 80% that we wanted, but we still wanted that 20%. So we sat down and we thought, how are we going to get it? And behavioral research has shown that if you want to create behavioral change, you need to bombard someone with messages, the same message, over and over again from lots of different angles, from lots of different sources. So what we decided was, rather than spread ourselves out over the entire country, which is what we had been doing, and Botswana's the size of Texas, eh? It's not little. So we decided rather to focus in and use our interventions and use our programs that we knew worked so well, all on top of each other, all at the same time, in the same place. And so what we've decided to start with are these villages here. Oh, whoops, oh dear, here we go. These villages here, this little snake bite here, are the villages of Bere and Kakai. And these are two Kalahari Bushman settlements in the middle of a beautiful wildlife corridor. So this area is a massive wildlife corridor. You can sort of see the colors. The green is the national parks. The light blue, which is these areas here, are semi-protected wildlife management areas. And the gray areas, all this, is farms. Okay? So this used to be a massive migration, the biggest migration in the world back in its day, bigger than the Serengeti wildebeest migration, right? And then the government decided to build a massive 2-meter veterinary cordon fence across the entire country and cut that migration route off. So millions and millions of antelope died in the 1980s during a particularly bad drought year. Just died on the fence. And so now the corridor still exists, but it's only here. It's 2/3 of what it once was, stretching between the Central Kalahari Game Reserve here and the Kalahari Transfrontier Park. But these farming areas here and here are constricting that corridor like you wouldn't believe. As we speak, I mean, I only did this presentation like a week or two ago. Since I have done this presentation, this corridor no longer exists. They have put farms there now. They've completely cut off that third section of the corridor. And now they're talking about putting fenced farms here as well and squeezing this corridor even more. And what that means for these communities is that they're going to get more wildlife coming through their villages, and then the antelope come through and the carnivores come after, and then their conflict just gets worse and worse. And this is important because you remember, this is Cheetah Heartland here, the densest population of cheetahs in the world. You slice that in half, and you're segmenting the world's last continuous population of cheetahs. This is the world's last continuous population of cheetahs. And segmenting populations of threatened species is the beginning of the end when you're talking about extinction. Okay, we have to keep this population connected. Otherwise, we're going to be in big trouble. So for the villages of Beria and Kakai, we are taking this multidisciplined approach, bombarding them with interventions to help them out. And we're taking a completely new approach with this. So we've actually created an entirely new department of CCB called Communities for Conservation. And we're really excited about this. It's going to be focusing more on the people and trying to build them up and develop the communities so that they're benefiting from their natural resources rather than being burdened by the natural resources. So we're doing a lot of participatory planning. We did a needs assessment with both of these communities, and we found out what their priorities are going forward, what they need, what they want, and what their major challenges are. And it seems like a really obvious step, but a lot of conservationists don't do this. They go in saying, well, we think that you want more livestock because then you'll have more money and then you'll be happier. But in reality, that's not what they want. They want preschool for their kids because they don't have any preschool, or they want something completely different. So doing the needs assessment with these guys was really, really important step. And they did give us a whole bunch of priorities that they wanted that wasn't what we were expecting. So we're really excited about moving forward with this. And we're going to continue our community programs with the farmers in this area. The livestock guarding dog program will be focused in these villages. Our farmers' workshops will continue because they do a really good job. Our education programs will continue, all at the same time with all of the other things going on, as well as these new tourism activities that we're going to help them with. So in Botswana, they have community trusts so that the communities themselves can take ownership over the land and the natural resources they have. So they're in charge of what happens there in those wildlife management areas. The problem is, in terms of developing tourism and things, these are Kalahari Bushmen. These guys don't have experiences running lodges or waiting tables or anything like that. They can track a wildebeest, for 100 kilometers, but they don't know how to, do bar service. So we are helping develop capacity building to help them increase their skills that they will need to start, partnering with tourism operators to start some really exciting programs there in those villages. And we have already found some tourism operators that are interested in doing some really cool stuff in this area. So we're very, very excited about the things that we have in store for the villages of Beria and Kakai. To reach this 20% that's so almost impossible to reach, we also have to start thinking outside the box. So thinking things that we haven't done before and things that are new and revolutionary. So one of the things we've been doing is really exciting, is the development of farmers' networks. So farmers' networks is a way to use peer-to-peer communication to get our messages across. So when I go out into the farming communities, No one wants to listen to me. I mean, I'm an Australian, so no one really wants to listen to me anyway. But a farmer doesn't want to listen to me or even my colleagues at CCB because we're conservationists, bunny huggers. We're bound to go in there and tell them, stop shooting cheetahs, and all these things that they don't necessarily want to hear. And they don't trust us because they don't think that we farm particularly well. So they want to listen to other farmers. So this way you have farmers, someone's used a livestock guarding dog, they know that they're awesome, they go and tell their friend in the farmer's network who's also a farmer, hey, I used a livestock guarding dog, they were fantastic. And so then they will listen. So that's the premise behind the farmers' networks. We also use the networks as a group that we can do capacity building with, and they also often get livestock guarding dogs. They're sort of top of our waiting list for livestock guarding dogs as well. Another way that we're thinking outside the box and doing things a little bit differently is this. We have really big parties, that's what I'm talking about. But you see me sort of, whoops, I've done it again. Fat and pregnant in the middle. This is the Botswana Carnivore Forum. So in 2016, we got all of the people involved in large carnivore research and conservation in the entire country and got them all together for a 2-day workshop to talk about the issues that we're having with conservation. The reason behind this was that we wanted to improve the communications that were going on so that we all knew what each other was doing. We weren't repeating things, repeating research that was getting done, which happens a lot, and just improving the efficiency of the conservation of large carnivores in the country. Because quite frankly, we're running out of time. And one of the really exciting outputs of this was the fact that we created these, and this is part of our occupancy study for large carnivores in Botswana. Kind of boring maps, I know, but this is actually a wow moment. And the reason this is a wow moment is because this data, and the data is the red squares is presence, and the grey squares are areas where they surveyed, but we didn't get presence. So this is cheetahs. This is all the large carnivores, lions, leopards, wild dogs, hyenas, cheetahs, all together. So it goes to show you the cheetahs are disappearing. Look at this. All these areas were surveyed, but no cheetahs in these areas. So it's a bit scary. But the wow part of it is the fact that every single researcher that was involved in large carnivores gave their data for this. All of their data from the last 6 years, put it together. Now, it may not seem that exciting, but scientists do not share their data. Okay? They're like my 2-year-old. They just do not know how to share. It's not part of no, they don't do it. So for everyone to give their data for this is monumental. And no one has done this before. So we're finishing this occupancy project to show the distribution of all the large carnivores and the densities of all the large carnivores and how many we have left in Botswana. So it's really, really exciting. And we're working with the government with this as well. So the purpose behind the Botswana Carnivore Forum is to help the government understand better what's going on with large carnivores and how much of a problem we're facing. Because we really, really are running out of time. People don't realize how much we're running out of time. But it's becoming quite scary now. Cheetahs in particular, the populations are just crashing. So in 1900, we had 100,000 cheetahs. Now less than 7,000. They're just disappearing. If we don't do something really drastic now, I'm going to be explaining to these guys that there are no more cheetahs left. These are my kids. That's Ava, that's Jake. It's hard to keep toddlers clean at the best of times, let alone when you're in the bush. I don't want to have to explain to them that cheetahs went extinct on our watch. I mean, I want them to be able to go to their daddy's farm in the Kalahari and see a cheetah run across the road in front of us. I want them to be able to find cheetah tracks on the sand road on the way to grandma's place. For any species to go extinct and to be only found in captivity is a tragedy for any species. But for a cheetah, an animal that runs, to never be able to stretch out and run through the grasslands anymore. I mean, that's a tragedy beyond words. I don't want that to happen on my watch. And it comes down to wow moments. CCB is now in the business of wow moments. So this is Naomi. She's a single mother that farms goats in the north of Botswana. And she was really, really struggling. Cheetahs and jackals eating her goats. And the numbers were just going down. They were getting hit, and they were getting hit, and they were going down. And she was struggling. She had 3 kids to look after by herself, single mum. And she was running out of the only income source she had. There was hardly any goats left. And then she found out about us, heard about our livestock guarding dog program. And we gave her 2 livestock guarding dogs. And those dogs, I mean, these dogs are just amazing. So brave. They're just, these local dogs, they're so hardy as well. I mean, they're resistant to local diseases, local parasites. They don't eat much. They're super cheap to keep. I mean, it was just perfect for her. And these dogs just protected that herd 100%. No losses after that, as soon as she got the dogs. And suddenly her herd started to grow. Within 2 years, she had enough goats that she could start selling them. She had excess that she was selling, and she got enough money to build her own house and put in electricity, which in Botswana is pretty spectacular. And because she wasn't having to go out with the goats every day, she could spend more time with her kids, because the dog was now doing that. It was going out with the herd every day. So she could spend time with her kids. That moment that we gave her those livestock guarding dogs has changed her life. So I keep pointing there. Changed her life forever. So that was her wow moment. And we're so proud that we were able to give her that and give the other farmers of Botswana that. And it's because of you guys. We have so many of our supporters here in the audience today, and WCN has been just phenomenal. We couldn't do it without you guys. We couldn't give these wow moments to these people without you guys. So thank you so much. From Rebecca, who's very sad she couldn't be here, from our dedicated team at CCB, who's back in the bush, muddy, dealing with all the snakes, and from the cheetahs in Botswana, I say to all of you, Kele boha tata, thank you very much.